Today on Locked On Canadiens, will this team make the playoffs next year?
You are Locked On Canadiens, your daily podcast on the Montreal Canadiens, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi there, everyone, and welcome to episode 1042 of your first listen of the day every day. As you know, we're free and available wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube. And today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. My name is Lars Hab, also known as the Active Stick, and as always, the wonderful Scott Matla is here with me, and we're about to recap an extremely wild game and talk about the Montreal Canadiens being exciting and lots of things happening, and then potentially us having some fun things to talk about next season as well. Scott, there were so many things that happened in that game. I jokingly referred to it as a tale of two Nicks. Which Nick do we want to get out of the way first?
Nick Cousins should be redacted in the streets for being a repeated scumbag, and I no longer feel bad when bad things happen to him. Purely from an on-ice thing this year, he's been involved in other incidents and all this other stuff. And then in this game, it is a game that is out of reach. This is a game that is pretty much over. We're just trying to get across the finish line here. Like you and I had said yesterday, nobody get hurt. Just get in, get out, play well. If you win, cool. If you don't, play strong and keep up with them, which the Canadiens won this game, which is great. But just
all we wanted was nobody to get hurt or die.
Well, to be fair, no one on our team got hurt, but we'll get into that in a second. Plays offside, like very clearly offside. The whistle has gone. Jake Evans is standing still, and Nick Cousins comes up and throws a shot at him. And yes, this is not an aggressively hard hit. It wasn't like he aimed for the head like the coward Mark Scheifele or anything like that. But it's the kind of move that you look at someone and you just go, what the hell are you doing? What purpose is this besides just being a jerk? And there's ways to be a jerk without getting yourself also then thrown out of the game. And I think out of everything is that Arbor Jackeye was on the ice at the same time that this happened, and that he is lucky that Jake Evans grabbed him first before Jackeye got there, because I think we would have seen a homicide in Montreal if Arbor Jackeye got his hands on Nick Cousins in that situation.
100%.
Speaking of injuries, Aaron Ekblad tried to punch Juraj Slafkovsky in the face.
Why did he do that just before the playoffs? Does he not know who he is?
47-year-old Aaron Ekblad. I think it's funny because Slafkovsky is playing a loose puck, and you can see on the replay, on the reverse angle, Ekblad's entire thing is throwing a shot right at his head, gets in a tussle, gets taken down with Slafkovsky, misses the entire rest of the game when the Panthers are objectively not playing well. It's very funny to me that if you're going to play like a jerk and you get hurt because of it, I don't feel bad for you.
I just think it was such a stupid move. It was like, the Canadiens are not a thing. It's not like you're competing with them for a playoff spot or for a home ice advantage or anything. The Canadiens should not be a blip on your radar. You should just be going through the motions in this game so that you can make it to the playoffs and then do something in the playoffs. And it's just so unnecessary and stupid. But I just wanted to get back to Jake Evans for a second, because for some reason now he's reminding me of this quote. Do you remember the Brian Burke when he went on, it was a press conference or something, and he was like, Sedin is not Swedish for punch me or headlock me in a scrum. And I feel like Jake Evans is not English for taking cheap shots at him.
It was such a weird game in that Slafkovsky had them just kind of crawling in their skin, that he was playing to the whistle and playing for loose pucks. And every time he did that, they had to try and bully him 2 or 3 on 1 because one person was not enough to control the large frame of Juraj Slafkovsky. 20-year-old Juraj Slafkovsky. When I say he's going to be a menace to society, I'm not kidding. He was, again, very, very good tonight. Cole Caulfield was very good tonight. I have very few like actual issues with this game. I yelled at Josh Anderson on the first Canadiens goal against, and after that,
He wasn't
I
offensive. After
no,
that, he didn't offend us.
No, he had opportunities and good chances that he was doing everything you want to see from him. Again, he didn't score any goals in those, but like I have no complaints about this. And I know people are like, well, they should be winning or losing games and in the tank and everything like that. I believe as of right now, Ottawa is tied or winning against Minnesota there, which no matter what, let's see here. They are tied 2-2. Minnesota's on the power play with 8 minutes left to play in the third period. The Canadiens are not moving up tonight regardless right now. They're sitting in sixth. I need the actual standings here. Montreal is now 3 points behind Arizona for the 5th overall pick.
Wow.
We are tied with Ottawa in points, but Ottawa's game has not finished yet. Ottawa has a game in hand. The Canadiens are still sitting in the top 6, and they get to end a 2-year losing streak. Win their first game against a divisional rival in 2024. They were 0-8-3 against their division in 2024 so far. And you know what? I'm not going to be mad.
I don't hate it.
I know we're going to talk about Nick Suzuki in the next segment there, but this is kind of game that you love to see in a lottery season.
Absolutely. Like, honestly, like you were talking about the game being like, what do we even talk about? We only have half an hour to talk about this, but we have to talk about Cole Caulfield and Juraj Slafkovsky. I guess teeing him up for that goal, is that what we would call it?
It's something that he wouldn't have done last year. Last year, he would have lost the puck and either tried to reach for it or just hammer it off the boards and in. But he manages to keep his composure, keep his base. Juraj Slafkovsky, this is, swipe the puck back and then just kind of flick it around the defender there, sending Caulfield in alone. And Caulfield slow plays the wraparound, tucks it in on the post there, gets his 21st of the year. It's all progress in there. And yes, I know we had aspirations of Cole Caulfield, 40 goal scorer this year. I still think he can do that, not this year, but next year.
Mm-hmm.
But we've
or
seen
the year after. I think there's a lot of possibility for him being a multi-time or multiple 40 goal scorer.
And the maturation of his game overall is so important. And Nathan in the Eyes on the Prize Slack put this best, that if you said Suzuki and Caulfield, one of them has 30 plus goals and one of them has 20 plus goals, but one of them has 40 plus assists and one of them has, I think, closing like in there, you would take that regardless of who it went for, but you would assume Caulfield has more goals. I'm not going to be upset about watching this team mature to the next level. Mike Matheson played a strong game. I thought Arbor Jacki played a very strong game. I haven't even like dove into the numbers too deeply, but the Canadiens had 16 high danger chances, only allowed 8 against Florida, a team who is very, very good at just generating offensive chances here. Oh boy, yes, Yellenden. That's not great. The fourth line got hammered again. In case anyone is interested, the leader in expected goals for percentage tonight was Brendan Gallagher at 84.5%, Arbor Jacki at 79.4%, David Savard at 75%, and Michael Pezzetta at 73%. Like,
wow.
We talked about how they played well against Colorado. They beat, the Flyers. They played well against Seattle and won that game. They took Edmonton to the brink and, lost in overtime on a power play, etc. This team is putting together all the building blocks with a line and a half of, actual regular NHL talent. Respect to everybody else, but and it's impressive. And yeah, maybe some of the counting stats, regular Corsi 4 and stuff don't look great, but someone's going to play hard minutes there and some people are going to lose those matchups. But I look at the names that are in here and I just see effort and I see buy-in. And that's all you ever want from a team at this point is you want to see the team buying into an identity, into a narrative. And this Canadiens team, they basically control the fate of who's going to make that wild card spot. Game against the Islanders left, 2 games against the Red Wings. They kind of control the fate of some of these teams in here. And based on the way they've been playing, that's not exactly a team I want to be facing with the playoffs on the line at this point, I think.
Speaking of the playoffs, later on in today's show, we are going to talk about how soon we can expect this team to make the playoffs. But first, we're going to talk about what Scott was saying, a line and a half of regular NHLers. Let's talk about one of the most important regular NHLers of this team, Nick Suzuki. That's coming up in just one moment. But first, this episode is brought to you by Game Time. Let me tell you about Game Time. If you've tried to buy tickets in the past to local events, whether it's sports, theater, whatever is going on, you will know that sometimes it is an ordeal, a chore with many, many hidden fees, and sometimes it's impossible to get. Well, I'm here to tell you that you don't have to live like that anymore because there is now Game Time. Like, it can be really frustrating sometimes. Game Time will not do that. You can browse through the Game Time app and talk about any upcoming events that are going on in particular sports. I mean, this is a sports podcast. What I really like about it is all the last minute tickets and the flash deals that you can get. Also depends on zone as well. There's zone deals you can get right now. Baseball is getting back into season, and you can find all kinds of tickets for any kind of event in your area. And what you can do is you can also look up your seats from the app, and you'll see what the view is like, so you can decide before you buy. And then there's all kinds of stuff like event cancellation protection. Like, really, this is a no brainer. It really, really is something for everybody. So you can take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guarantee. All right, Scott, I've got a bone to pick with lots of people who think that Nick Suzuki is not a number one center in the NHL.
So I tell them they're wrong and shut the hell up. Pardon, the directness of that language. You have someone who's playing over a point per game pace on a team without a true second line center. Alex Newhook has done well filling in. Jake Evans has punched above his weight basically all season now. And you know what? One of the best scoring seasons in the last, I believe, decade or so for the Montreal Canadiens. He's closing in on Max Domi's record, who is the last person to go over 70 points before this season. I'm not saying he's going to hit Alex Kovalev's record in the last however many years, but he's at, I believe, 72 points, and 84 points isn't crazy there. The Habs have, hold on here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 games left. If he sticks to this pace, you're looking at an 80-point season the first time in a while, and you're looking at potentially 40 goals for Nick Suzuki. When people said he's not actually a first-line center, he's not elite, why would they take him to the Olympics? The Canadiens can't win with a guy like that. Why would they make him captain? Again, I invite you to just shut up and watch as Nick Suzuki just does so many smart things on a line with players who are now being able to play at his level. Caulfield we knew could. Slavkovsky stepping in and being able to play at that level is so instrumental because you have three people, three different skill sets who are all on the same wavelength. And just good luck with that. The work that Nick Suzuki has done this season is beyond commendable. He's gotten better again defensively. That whole line has. He's put up a new career high in points, goals, everything like that. And again, he's doing it on a lottery team. Second most goals in the NHL since the All-Star break. He's trailing Austin Matthews, who has 62, and Zach Hyman, who gets to play with Connor McDavid. That's not nothing at all. And I really, really hope this just puts to rest the Nick Suzuki is not a first-line center talk, because I don't know what else you could possibly say at this point. He is absolutely a first-line center, and if you don't think so, you're either, purposely trying to stir things up or you're not paying enough attention. And I highly recommend you start paying attention at this point, because sooner or later he's going to come for your team too. And you're not going to like it when that happens.
And I just like I think about this and like all that he's been doing with nobody behind him, right? Like since Kirby Doc got injured, like you said, there's a ton of players there that are punching above their weight class a lot, but it's essentially Nick Suzuki. Like who has the toughest assignments on this team? It's Nick Suzuki. Who is on a line that is the most defended against on this team? It is Nick Suzuki, right? Who is playing with two players who, if everything goes right, are like superstar level, and if things go wrong, then, we complain about Cole Caulfield only having 21 goals this season or whatever. And it's all Nick Suzuki, and he's doing this as a captain, as a young player. Like this is the thing that should scare people, is that Nick Suzuki is like, this is the beginning or before his prime. Like he's not even fully in his prime right now. Like this is just something where he's only going to get better. Every time I think about him, I get emotional at like, he's like our collective son, and like people should not doubt him, because we have seen him prove them wrong over and over again. We've seen him prove goalposts wrong, right? Like he hits the post, he turns around, and then he savagely scores a goal. Like this is a guy who can control the pace of a game. This is a guy who can, play defensive, play offensive, and he betters himself every single day, every single game. He does not take no for an answer. And then every single time people think that he doesn't have as much value as he does, he ends up shaming them. Like for me, Nick Suzuki, like if you're still doubting him at this point, or you're still putting question marks on him, like what are you even doing? Because it doesn't matter. Like even if he has like remember when we were talking about how he was slumping to start the season, and he like basically had a point every game. Like it was just it was essentially, like we were watching him and we're like, well, he's not scoring like, 3 goals a game. Oh my god, he's not proving that he's elite or first line. Like I think Nick Suzuki is perfectly fine. He's going to be okay. When I say perfectly fine, I don't mean the caliber of his hockey. I mean like, he's going to be okay. And I want people to stop doubting him, or you know what, keep doing it, and you're just going to be the ones looking like fools.
And I think that's exactly it. Is like I look through some of the names that are around him in terms of, assists and other things. You have someone like Claude Giroux, Mika Zibanejad, Anze Kopitar, Braden Point, who admittedly has 42 goals this season. The coward Mark Scheifele, Adrian Kempe, Philip Forsberg. Suzuki's not trailing a lot of these guys in assists, and you see some of these names, and these are guys you think they're often at the top of the list or for the most part with NHL scoring. Vincent Trocheck's at 50. That's 10 more assists, but at the same time, I look at these other teams around him, and I'm like, a lot of these are good teams here that are in front of him. You have teams like Tampa Bay, the Kings, the Rangers, maybe not Ottawa, Winnipeg, Nashville, Edmonton, Carolina. Johnny Gaudreau was 45 assists playing on Columbus, so good for him. Happy for Jay, our friend here, but Dallas and everything. He's doing this without that same support group, without Kirby Doc again. He's doing this kind of on his own and is putting together a career season. And I think that ignoring what he is doing so far is just an absolute mistake for people. It hasn't updated the stats on NHL.com yet because, of course not. Why would it ever do that? He's just been everything you could want from your team captain this year. Everything has improved. More points, better defensive metrics, all these things together.
More puck poise, as much as I hate that expression, more puck poise.
That entire first line is just clicking along. A lot of that is Nick Suzuki is maturing to that next level there.
He's the dad on that line,
which is wild to think about. And they're going to get better. And even if Nick Suzuki caps out as an 80-point center, those don't grow on trees here. And to dismiss the level that he's going at, potentially he's playing around a point per game pace right now, is downright silly and ridiculous to not do that. 40 goals is within reach. Point per game is within reach. 8 games left. I think he can do it. I'm not going to make any bets on that. I already have to do hot ones again in our off season here. But You're betting against Nick Suzuki going all the way back to when he was in junior, facing game 7, elimination game after elimination game, and all he does is prove people wrong, is just the silliest thing you could possibly do at this point. Nick Suzuki's a first-line center. If you don't like it, I don't really care, because that's the fact of the matter is he is the first-line center of the greatest franchise in hockey, and if you don't like that, get out. Do not care. Did not read. LOL, muted, whatever.
Blocked, deleted, burned, murdered. All right. We're going to turn our attention, or we're going to keep our attention really on how good this team can be next season. And that is coming up. Like, will they make the playoffs? That is a big question. And that is coming up in coming up in just one moment here on Locked On Canadiens. But first, this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Speaking of not betting against people, do not bet against Nick Suzuki. In fact, you should bet on whatever competitions are going on right now. I don't even know if we can name them. It involves a basketball and the month.
The final's not done yet. They just played they're just getting to the final 4 for everybody now.
Okay, so the final 4 is going on, but it doesn't matter because you can still bet even if your bracket was busted a long time ago, because you can bet on every single game. So whether you're betting on a big upset or on the number 1 seed, you can go dancing with America's number 1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. That is $200 to use on points, spreads, money lines. You can even pick who's going to win it all. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and bet on college hoops until they cut down the nets. It is time now to discuss whether this team is going to make the playoffs or not next season. So a couple of times this season when it's come up, we have thought that this team could challenge for a wild card spot, but a number of things are expected to change. So I feel like a lot of the players who took a leap forward in Laval are going to make the NHL team. There's going to be some guys that for sure will be gone, whether it's through trade or something else. Maybe their arm explodes and they retire. I have no idea. So what do we think, Scott? Like, realistically, let's be realistic. Do we think that the Montreal Canadiens can make the playoffs next year?
I think if looking at the rest of their schedule right now, they have 8 games left, and just, I know I keep going back to this, but I look on here and I see 1, 2, up to 4, maybe 5 definitely winnable games, and 3 that I'm a little less sure about just because of the quality of competition. This is a team that could potentially hit 80 points this season. That's not obviously playoff numbers, but that gets them outside the bubble, basically. They are pulling onto the street. They are a couple of minutes away and turning down the radio to find your house, which is a metaphor for the playoffs here. And again, are doing this without a second line center, without, some other winger help, with a 3 goalie rotation for most of the season that was not working, with a young team figuring it out. And I look at this team now and I think to myself, there's no reason they can't be on the bubble next season here. If they can get the power play functioning, they're like 1 for their last 22 or something, which is not ideal, but you have an entire summer for that. This is a team that you can look at it next year that might surprise people, especially if Caden Primo can continue to be a cromulent backup goaltender and Samuel Montembeault can continue to be a legitimate 1A starter here. And if the defense continues to improve, if that means David Savard is traded and that means Lane Hudson in the lineup and that makes your team better, okay. Or David Reinbacher and Adam Engstrom. Anyone can surprise and make this. I don't want to pencil in anybody for any spots. If you can bring in Joshua Waugh full-time next season, if you can shed a contract, Yoel Armia is playing very well enough that I don't mind having him in the lineup next season, but he's also more valuable now. So it's that likely demand for someone of his talents. If, God forbid, you can give her to Josh Anderson, you open up money in cap. Do you make that trade? Do you add a Troy Terry, a Trevor Zegras, like rumors swirling and stuff like that? There's no reason this team can't potentially challenge for a playoff spot. Tampa's window is shrinking by season here. Their core is aging. They're not loaded with prospect talent. Toronto's window at some point is going to do something. They are still at the top of this division here, but it'll come down eventually. The Bruins are the same way at some point there. And the Sabres and Red Wings seem to be close, but they're not there. There is a window for the Canadiens to be sliding in there in the next season and all of it depends. One, stay healthy and continue your transition. But I'm not going to go on record and say, yes, they are definitely a playoff team next year, but there's no reason they can't be that team just knocking on the door all season. And maybe they surprise someone. Stranger things have happened. They are absolutely a team, though, that I think people would be wise to not underestimate next year.
I think that's a good way to put it. Like, they should not be taken lightly. And Scott, just before we end, I just want to remember, mid-season how so many people were doubting Marty, and I too was doubting Marty. And I do think that he still has some ways to go with in-game tactics, like as a tactician. But in terms of development, look at what he's been able to squeeze out of the stone that is most of this talent. I think that for me has been the biggest thing, is that players have taken strides forward. A lot of them are regaining their confidence. And then there's some players where, for whatever reason, just weren't working, and now they actually are. And I'm thinking of players like Yoel Armia, there's definitely a lot of there's still a lot of room to grow for Marty, but I don't doubt him as much as a coach for a young team.
It all goes back to that buy-in there that I look at Martin St. Louis and I go, he's got these guys believing in everything that they do. He's not overcoaching them. He's not yelling. He's not throwing fits like a certain Flyers coach or Paul Maurice, who, is just throwing his team under the bus when they're underperforming. There is a nurturing to this. You have someone like Sheldon Keefe, who just says the dumbest thing possible all the time while getting mad. In that, I don't know what the ceiling for Martin St. Louis is as a coach, but I look at how he's kind of taken a team that was probably as low as you can get. You had just lost the Stanley Cup final. Your star player, your goaltender, career-ending injury. Your team captain, career-ending injury. One of the most well-loved guys and a leader in that room, Paul Byron, career-ending injury. Nothing is going right. You've sent your top prospect to the AHL. Your GM's potentially not coming back. This team was at rock bottom, as bad as it gets. Go back and watch our shows from them. Martin St. Louis comes in and we go, well, we'll see what we could do here. And all of his words are backed up and he's doing what he's saying he's doing. Does he sometimes make infuriating lineup decisions? Yes. But name me an NHL coach who doesn't do that at this point. He's following through on what he says. They are committed to being the best Montreal Canadiens team that they can be. And then we just go and see what's next there. What is the next step here? Is it the playoffs? I think it's the playoffs. I would love to see Martin St. Louis get this team in there. This is the guy who had, like I said, built them back up from the ground floor with nothing. No, I don't want to say spine, but no confidence in their game. There's no swagger. This was a walking dead team going out there and just getting blasted every night. And now they just knocked off the Stanley Cup finalists. They beat one of the best teams in the NHL in the Avalanche, beat the brakes off the Flyers team trying to make the playoffs, beat their boogeyman team, put a scare into the Oilers. The Canadiens are a team that are on their way up. And if everything continues this way, you can thank one, Adam Nicholas and the front office are doing a lot of work with these guys, but Martin St. Louis and his coaching staff as well. It's a complete 180 from where we were at a year and a half, 2 years ago, with Dom Ducharme not having any answers and it just being a mess. It is so good to see something like this happening right now.
I agree. All right, so We will obviously keep following this trajectory of the Habs, and we're really excited to do so. So make sure you are subscribed to this podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Do not forget that our Friday mailbag episode, we do one every week. So please send us your mailbag questions on Thursday, or for the Thursday episode. Sorry. You can find us on Twitter at LO_Canadians. You can always email us at lockedoncanadians at gmail.com. You can leave mailbag questions in the YouTube comments. Tell your friends, please subscribe. And we will see you tomorrow.